This video is sponsored by Scentbird. Hey everybody, welcome back to the List Zone. Today we're doing best first watches of 2024. It's pretty self-explanatory. These are movies that I watched for the first time in 2024. This obviously does not include new releases. Those will be saved for the best movies of 2024 list. And I'm surprised I haven't done this before, to be honest, because it's like I watch a lot of older movies. And let's kick it off with Kure, directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. This is my first Kiyoshi Kurosawa film. It's probably most people's. It's his big hit, his classic, and it was so much better than I thought it would be. I've been intimidated by this one for a very long time. I knew it was something I needed to get around to eventually, but I always assumed it was kind of one of those heady psychological horror films that I would need to be in like a very specific mood to get into, and I'm not wrong. It is a very psychological kind of, you know, one of the earliest examples of whatever elevated horror means. But it's not hard to get into at all. It kind of eases you in. It has a masterful edit in that, like, it just slowly puts you into the headspace of the main character who is undergoing just a total breakdown, basically. But it's very subtle about it. It's an incredibly subtle film that you still feel, you know, undeniably affected by in the end. The framing is just gorgeous. It's a lot of like really static, kind of far away shots. There's a lot of attention towards symmetry in it that I found really interesting. I mean, just gorgeous shots all around in this thing. Yeah, really loved Kure. Like top 50 of all time worthy. Absolutely. Lady Snowblood. One of the highlights of the year for sure. This is, if you didn't know, basically what inspired Kill Bill. Once you watch this, you basically see Kill Bill as a remake, essentially. And I love both films a lot, but I do think Lady Snowblood is just a bit better, in my opinion. I think the rage at the center of it, this lead performance by Maiko Kaiji, is just incredible. I mean, she is just dominating the screen. It's like watching a sword come to life. The colors in this thing are so vibrant. That's like the one thing everyone says about this film. I hate to just repeat what everyone else is saying, but really, the colors in this thing are just so exciting and so crazy. It's a revenge film that actually says something new. It really hammers home the idea of revenge being part of a cycle, you know, and there's like a feeling at the end of this thing that's not what you typically expect from revenge films. Usually I feel like this type of thing ends with the character feeling a sort of emptiness. Sometimes it does feed into it and just like you feel a real sense of victory and fulfillment. But in Lady Snowblood, it's not either of those things. It's just the sense that like this is never going to end. Like this is just a part of who I am now. And I find that really interesting, really true, and I just loved it. Yeah, I loved watching this thing. It's a ton of fun. There's also just so much blood. So much blood. I mean, that set must have smelled pretty stinky, and fragrance is pretty important as it can affect the way you're perceived and even boost your confidence. Anytime I've put some honest-to-God thought into how I smell, it's made a huge difference in how I present myself. Since moving to LA, for example, I've been paying a lot more attention to my scent as the weather and general vibe out here is a lot different, and I found a lot of great fragrances through this week's sponsor, Scentbird. Through Scentbird, I recently received House of Beau's Casablanca, which has notes of desert fig, white tea, and vanilla bourbon. It feels like such a West Coast fragrance, in my opinion. I've been very obsessed with it. Makes me feel like I'm one with my surroundings. Very refreshing, very airy. I just can't get enough. I also got Bountiful by Blue Atlas, Ambassador by Jasada, and Boutique by Perfumology. I gotta say, I've been doing Scentbird for a while, and this is by far my best selection so far. Which is to say, through Scentbird, I've naturally become a lot more knowledgeable on perfumery and what works well for me. I didn't know anything about any of this beforehand, but through trial and error, I've really figured out what works for me. And I've been able to do so without breaking the bank. Scentbird is very affordable, helping me save money and minimize risk by not blowing a ton of money on a big bottle that I end up not even being that crazy about. And it's super easy and flexible to use. I can change my fragrance each month, play around with different styles, see what works best for me. There are over 700 fragrances to try, so the possibilities really do feel endless. If this sounds cool, which it is, scan the QR code or use the link below. And with my coupon code Karsten, you'll get 55% off at Scentbird. Plus, you'll get free delivery to your door and a free case. You'll get that product for half the price. That's just $8. That's a steal. Again, use my code Karsten to get 55% off at Scentbird. Days of Heaven by Terrence Malick, another big one that I always assumed I needed to be in a specific headspace, but I kind of was forced into it by my girlfriend, who was just like, let's do it. Let's just put it on. We put it on. I didn't expect to finish it, but like literally 5 minutes in, I was like, we're finishing this. I'm hooked. I'm hooked. Which is not to say, well, usually when you say you're hooked, it's because of like a really riveting plot point or something, but there's some magic to Terrence Malick that when he gets it right, it's just completely transcendent. Days of Heaven is, I think, one of the strongest examples of who he is as a filmmaker. I didn't realize until after the fact that this is actually probably my favorite Terrence Malick film that I've seen. There's a lot that I haven't seen from him, but like it seems to exist somewhere in between the modern Terrence Malick and the old school Terrence Malick, and it just kind of exists on its own plane of existence. Like, very odd film, hard one to like describe in words, but like one of the most unique movie watching experiences I've had. Just gorgeous frames. We don't even need to talk about the cinematography. It's like a cinematography movie, but it's so much more than that. Which is something I didn't expect it to be. Baraka, directed by Ron Frick. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but a movie I never would have watched if not for Monkey Mondays, and there's a few of those on this list. Baraka being one of the craziest examples. Basically a montage, kind of is a montage of just a bunch of different cultures and places from around the world, but cut in a way that, like, you know, creates some sort of story. The synopsis for it on Letterboxd is literally just a film that attempts to capture the essence of life, which sounds incredibly pretentious and like kind of a bore, but that is really what you walk away feeling about this thing. It succeeds at that, I have to say. And it covers such vast territories, like it goes all over the place. You feel like you have such a concrete idea of what the world is. Like, you have a better sense of the world that we live in. And it doesn't say a single word. It's just the power of sound and images and cutting. And to me, that's like the beauty of film, right? If you really just like submit yourself to this thing and lean into it, you'll have a pretty borderline spiritual experience with it. Point Blank. Oh my God, I'm so happy to talk about Point Blank. There are like a handful of times where after watching a film, I was like jumping up and down with excitement. Like I was just buzzing. I think of like Punch Drunk Love, Climax, Nowhere, Nashville. Point Blank is one of those films. Directed by John Boorman, who also did Deliverance. Stars Lee Marvin, who in my eyes was like the first Adam Driver. Like, he's got the same kind of thing that Adam Driver has, like this very kind of stoic, long face. I've loved everything I've seen Lee Marvin in. He's one of my favorite actors from this era, and Point Blank is, you know, a great showcase of what he can bring to a film. Again, a very quiet character, doesn't say a ton. Kind of reminds me of Playtime, weirdly, in it being just like this kind of tall, kind of old school figure navigating a modern world that he feels he's grown out of. There's a lot of comedy to it, weirdly. Like, I mean, if it is comedy, it's like the driest, darkest humor ever. It is a pretty serious film, but like, it doesn't feel like a movie, weirdly. You just feel like you're following a guy. And I know that's a hard sell, that's a tough sell, but the way this film captures that and follows this guy at such a kind of glacial pace is just riveting. I guess psychedelic is kind of the right word to describe this. I think I felt the same way with John Boorman's Deliverance. He is a weirdly just psychedelic filmmaker. He knows how to put you in a really weird place. Point Blank being a much stronger, more obvious example of that. I expected this to be, you know, kind of a run-of-the-mill 70s or 60s crime film, but instead I got this like super stylized, super sleek, kind of meditative piece of work. A Summer's Tale. This year in general was the year I finally got into Rohmer. I still have a ways to go. I had a real good streak going in the summer at one point. I was watching like a Rohmer film a day and I was having a great time, and then for some reason I stopped. But A Summer's Tale, I have to say, looking back at it, kind of the highlight of that period of time. This is completely inappropriate and just has nothing to do with the quality of the film, but I think a large part in why I liked it so much is that I had like a massive on-screen crush on Amanda Langlet. She's so beautiful, and the Rohmer touch, adding a sort of like, you know, I'm not even gonna get it. But yeah, I just thought this was like a really lovely film that, like any great romance, really brought those feelings to life. It's such a simple movie, and it is, at the end of the day, kind of just a little bit of a love triangle situation that could be done very shallow, but obviously Rohmer makes it so much more than that. He brings it back to life and like what it means to move through life, and yeah, it's hard to talk about his films without sounding up your own ass, but I really enjoyed this one. Tokyo Story. Here, this is even worse. This is, if you didn't know, Ozu's masterpiece, his magnum opus, the one that, you know, is regarded as one of the best films ever made. Another one that I was very scared to jump into. I was willing to jump into like other Ozu films that were deemed more challenging before diving into this one, weirdly. And it wasn't what I was expecting. I don't know why I expected like such a big film about life, giant kind of like a 2001 type beast. But no, it is at the end of the day just another Ozu film, but it's like the best example of what he has to offer as a filmmaker. His films are small. They're these small family dramas, but they cover a vast period of time. Like, you get the perspectives of old people, young people, middle-aged people, teenagers. There's just such a crazy understanding of life in his work, and you learn a lot about living and regret and love and pain. Again, I sound so up my own ass, but that's like, you just gotta do that when you're talking about this man. This one is specifically devastating for a reason I can't obviously talk about because that would be spoiling the film. But yeah, it floored me more than I thought it would, basically. Really loved this one. Designed for Living, a Lubitsch film that I hadn't yet seen. I was going to watch a lot more of his films this year, and I think this is the only new one I caught. But loved it. As expected, his shit just makes me laugh. The best of what, like, that 1930s screwball comedies had to offer. If you liked Challengers, you're gonna like this. Talk about love triangles. This is, like, the funniest love triangle I've seen in film in a long time. Battle of Algiers. This is one that, one of my most unique movie-going experiences of the year. I caught it, I'm pretty sure, I don't think it was in 70. I caught it at Music Box, and before the screening, there was, like, a real seriousness in the air. Part of that is because someone that worked at the theater like made a little announcement and was like, hey, I know we always say this, but really don't go on your phones during this. Like, don't do it. Be very respectful for this film. Really, like, give it all of your attention. As much as I would love for this to be the norm at every screening, you can't say that at every screening because it wouldn't hold the same weight. But for some reason, this announcement really got the entire crowd to like lock in, for lack of a better term. And having finally seen the film, I can see why. It's the kind of thing that you don't want to miss a second of. It's a very angry film, and a lot of that energy comes from your attention and the pace, the momentum of it. I don't think I like fidgeted or adjusted my body once. I was that riveted by what was on screen. It's a really exciting film, and it's also just devastating in a number of ways. It's been a while since I've seen it, and of all the things on this list, I'm struggling to I guess remember specifics, but I do remember being very moved by the end. I just had to include it on this list for those reasons. The Planet of the Apes had to include this, probably one of the highlights for Monkey Mondays, but I'll save the highlights for a Monkey Monday specific video. Really surprising to me. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. One of the most profound of the Apes films. I mean, actually, now that I think about it, just flat out the best of the Apes films that I've seen. I love the new ones a lot. I think they're much better films than people realize. They go beyond just impressive VFX, and they have a ton of really fun action. They do a lot with the concept, but I don't think they have the same sort of like soul and commentary on society that this first film specifically has. Movies used to be so different, man. They used to really have shit to say, and the Planet of the Apes had shit to say. It is a lot of conversations, and to so many people that might sound like, you know, not at all what they're looking for in a film like this, but I wanted to see them get into the politics of this world. I wanted to see them break down like what the social hierarchy looks like here and why. It ends up being just a really fascinating film with one of the greatest endings of all time. The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I saw this at a screening with Roger Deakins in attendance, which was really cool to experience. Like, I could see his white hair the entire time. This thing is almost 3 hours long. This is a very long film, but one of those that doesn't feel like its length at all. It's a really gripping Western, shot obviously beautifully by Roger Deakins. Another really good revenge film as well. I think it shares a lot of the same qualities as something like Lady Snowblood, weirdly, kind of exploring where a lot of this rage comes from, what it will end up doing to you at the end of the day. What will you even get out of this? I think that's why I liked it so much. I went into this expecting just a very by-the-books Western and ended up getting a really fascinating film that went a lot deeper and was a lot more tragic than it needed to be. But I love it for that. It made me want to forgive Andrew Dominique for how much I hated Blonde. I don't think this did not make me like Blonde more, don't get me wrong, but it definitely made me want to check out more of his films. My Darling Clementine, directed by John Ford. This is, as expected, like one of the best of the year for sure. I fucking loved this movie. It made me realize just how much I've been sleeping on John Ford. I mean, I've always known he's been like, you know, one of the greatest filmmakers to ever do it, but you see the images in here. You see the way he plays with lighting, specifically black and white cinematography. And it's just like, wow, he knows how to make a really gorgeous image, and he knows how to like bring a lot of soul to this genre. I know there's probably, you know, obviously a lot of bad John Ford movies, and I'm just kind of watching the hits, but like, I don't think I've really gotten him as a filmmaker until My Darling Clementine. I watched this for my President's video. This was, I'm pretty sure, Truman's favorite film. Really sad movie as well, which is again, just not something I expect from the Western genre. Two Westerns in a row that really, you know, broke down my expectations. I told myself when I first watched this, I was like, this is going to creep up and be a 5 in my head later on. With time, I can confidently say it's easily a 5. This is one of the greatest films I've ever seen. High Noon, definitely not on the same level. I gotta say, I cannot talk about it in the same breath as My Darling Clementine. It's another Western, but this, on the other hand, is a bit more by the books, in my opinion, but that's not to say it's not great. It's one of the best examples of just a by-the-books Western. It's honestly, anybody like looking to get into Westerns, if you're anything like me who has avoided them for a very long time, I would say High Noon is a good place to start. This was Eisenhower and Bill Clinton's favorite film. I honestly had so much fun talking about this one in the President's video because it has a lot of like parallels to like the presidency and like what it means to run for office and like be a person like that in a community. I just thought it was so fascinating to see it be the favorite film of 2 presidents. I recommend checking it out. You know, Breaking the Waves, Lars von Trier, really icky film, really devastating film, hard film to watch, but one that, you know, did move me by the end. Reminded me just how special Lars von Trier is as a filmmaker and how flawed he is at the same time, but we kind of, you know, the flaws work hand in hand with the work. I don't know how much to say about this one. It's been a while since I watched it, I will admit. But I do remember being pretty affected by it. When I look back at the list of films I watched this year, I had to include Breaking the Waves as a highlight. The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, even if I cannot show any footage of this. I'm not showing footage of any of these films. What am I talking about? I had to include this as a highlight from that Ghibli ranked video that I did. I watched a lot of Ghibli movies for the first time in that video, and this was almost number 1. This almost took the top spot. I do still think Mononoke comes out at number 1 by a landslide. But this was really special, this movie, especially knowing it was Takahata's final film. That adds a lot of weight to the ending and to a lot of what this is doing, really. The art style is incredibly unique. It's someone at the top of their game. There's clearly just so much love and attention poured into the animation. This was another one that I was intimidated by, that I was scared to check out because I thought it would be a very heavy film, but in reality, it's not at all. It does cover some pretty heavy topics, don't get me wrong. It'll make you feel like you got hit by a truck by the end, but it's easygoing. It's very soft in a good way. Conversation, Francis Ford Coppola. I wasn't afraid to check this one out, but I didn't think it would be my thing, which is crazy considering it exists in a type of film that I've historically loved. Blow Out, Blow Up, and now this. Yeah, one of the best movies about loneliness out there. I mean, this is a very lonely character in a similar way to Point Blank, actually. Just a kind of a guy who doesn't feel comfortable in the world he's in. But unlike Point Blank, I think this one has just so much more heart to it. This is a very kind of romantic film in the end, which, you know, might be controversial to say, but I think it's a film that gets to that place because of how good it is at capturing loneliness. It makes the human connection within the film just that much stronger, that much more intense. It feels crazy to call this my favorite Coppola film, but it might be. It's a lot simpler and a lot smaller scale than what I'm used to from him, and I do admire his, you know, ambition still. But when he really like hones in on one character and one specific, very internalized feeling, he kind of hits it out of the park. Clearly. Malcolm X, Spike Lee, a big one. I had knee surgery earlier this year, as many of you know, as I won't shut the fuck up about. And when I was bedridden, I was like, this is it. This is when I'm going to check out Malcolm X. And I'm so glad I did, man. Again, as intimidated as I was going into this, I would happily watch it again. I would run this shit back, like, next week if I had to. If nothing else, it's solidified Denzel Washington in my mind as being like one of the greatest actors to ever do it. Loses himself in this role, is able to capture an entire life, an entire philosophy within his performance. I mean, obviously you got to owe some of that to Spike Lee. This is a massive film, and Spike Lee manages to add his style and his flair to it. He gets to experiment in the cutting room like he usually does within the confines of such a massive biopic, which is incredibly impressive. It's one of Spike Lee's greatest achievements, undeniably. But my standout from this is obviously Denzel. This is something that exists beyond performances I'm used to. This goes beyond what great performance means. This is just complete commitment, and I just think it should continue to be talked about in that light. I think he really goes somewhere special with this one, and I really loved this thing. Really loved it. But I think that's going to do it. That's a good one to end on, right? What did you watch this year that you ended up loving? The possibilities are endless. I just asked a crazy question. Any movie you watched that what was it?